The movie begins in Eastfield, Australia, in 1994. We see a chaotic scene unfold at the church. A man named Ron has just arrived, and he sits amidst the clamoring crowd, witnessing Barbara's loud ritual. The priestess is shouting at the demon which has possessed a woman. The possessed lady is lying on the floor thrashing around. However, her movements are blocked by the people around her, who hold her down. Barbara calls out to the evil entity possessing the lady, and commands it to leave. Ron's face reflects visible concern, and he looks quite uncomfortable, almost as if it is his first time here. Despite this, as Barbara prays, he also partakes in the ritual, saying amen. At this very moment, Barbara's eyes land on him. Later, we see Ron and his wife Laura sitting in a private clinic. They have come to seek help from Dr. Marissa, a psychiatrist. Poor Laura looks traumatized. Her face is pale and blank. As the doctor is taking notes, Ron speaks up, asking her about some referral that they spoke of over the phone. Ron tells her that he would not want her to waste her time with the medical stuff. The man seems to take light of medical procedures and prefers the religious views over them. The doctor brushes off his comment and turns her gaze back towards her patient Laura, who is grappling with the loss of her child and struggling with depression. She asks her questions, but each time Ron cuts in, answering for her instead. The doctor tries her best to remain professional with this annoying man. She tells him that she wants Laura to answer and turns back towards the woman. She asks her again to share what happened. Once more, despite the doctor's request to let Laura speak, Ron cuts in. He shares a peculiar fact about Laura. Turns out she used to sleepwalk, but now it has gotten worse. The doctor questions how. Ron tells her that now Laura not only sleepwalks, but also dances strangely, without any clothes. Moreover, she usually ignores Ron when he tries to talk to her. But then the man would catch her talking to herself and staring off into space. Dr. Marissa looks at Laura for confirmation, and the woman discloses the truthfulness of her encounters with sights and sounds that go beyond her imagination. Although she acknowledges the likely falsehood of these experiences, Laura also maintains that she somehow believes them to be true. The poor woman is in a dilemma between reality and illusion. As she speaks, Laura remembers seeing a terrifying, mysteriously burnt man. However, she hasn't divulged this detail to anyone, not even Ron. Laura tells the doctor that all she ever wanted was a sweet family and a nice garden. Hearing this, Ron gets emotional and promises her that she would get what she wishes for. The doctor tells the couple that she would do her best to help them. She then recommends that they put Laura in an observatory so that they could examine her symptoms in more detail. However, Ron is not happy with this. He voices to the doctor that Laura doesn't require medical assistance, but rather spiritual help in the form of an exorcism. The scene shifts, and we find ourselves in Barbara's Eastfield home, where Ron appears somewhat lost. He is holding a holy Bible and is remembering the alarming behavior of his wife. He keeps thinking back on how she sleep danced and, despite his tries, didn't snap out of her reverie. Barbara notices this and beckons him into the kitchen. In the conversation that follows, Ron discloses Laura's ailment to Barbara. Hearing this, Barbara tries to share in his worries. She reveals how her own husband, who was a pastor Ron was acquainted with, battled with cancer. She tells him how the doctors recommended high doses of toxic medicines, and they complied, due to not having any other choice. Although initially the man seemed to recover, subsequent chemotherapy sessions took a toll. He started getting more and more weak. Barbara herself fell ill during this challenging period. Then, they made a friend named Daniel. He was an unorthodox friend from their congregation, who was quite empathetic. Daniel was aware of Barbara's husband's deteriorating condition. They soon formed a connection, as his own mother was also grappling with cancer. According to Barbara, Daniel knew what was happening. The woman tells him how the doctors were trying their best to keep them from the church, which was the reason behind their crumbling health. Despite all the weaknesses, they went to church and soon stopped taking the medicines as well. Although she doesn't explicitly say it, the woman blames her husband's deteriorating illness and subsequent passing upon the doctor. She believes that if they had refrained from taking any medicines from the start and maintained their almost fanatical faith in the church, her husband would have been miraculously cured from his terminal illness. Ron also agrees with the woman's words. Barbara then tells Ron that whenever he is ready to bring over Laura, she would be there to help him. The scene then shifts to Laura, who is troubled by a nightmarish vision once more. She sees herself surrounded by dark, eerie woods as she navigates a strange place. Clad in her night suit, she advances towards a strange noise of a baby crying. All of a sudden, a person cradling a baby appears near a tree and she gasps. But the duo disappear as soon as they appear. As she squints her eyes in the darkness trying to spot them, suddenly a terrifying burnt corpse pops up before her, scaring her senseless. Laura shrieks and awakens from her sleep. Turns out, it was just a nightmare. Although she is awake, Laura doesn't open her eyes for fear that something might appear before her again. Just then, Ron approaches her. He notices the prescribed tablets on the bedside table and frowns, not liking them. Sitting down on the bed, he inquires about the medication prescribed by Dr. Marissa. Laura admits to not taking the medicine regularly because it makes her feel very tired and weak. Ron is quite relieved. He mentions how Barbara's husband also admitted to feeling bad because of the medicines. Laura, however, counters that in order to get better, it is all right to feel bad with a medicine. Ron then asks her not to take medicine just for a day and see if she feels better or not. Laura laughs and tells him that she will think about it. Shortly after, Ron leaves the house to attend to other matters, while Laura heads to the kitchen where a plumber is fixing a pipe. She approaches the working man who greets her. Laura tells him that she needs a glass of water, and the man quickly makes way for her to go and fetch it. While filling up her glass of water, she offers him one. The plumber declines, saying that he doesn't drink other people's tap water because he knows what is in it. He then starts to talk about his strange conspiracy theories, about how tap water has strange microelements that affect people's brains, making them think in a certain way and be easily controlled. The poor woman becomes anxious by the minute with his bullshit talk. Then, all of a sudden, he asks about if she got her kid vaccinated. Dumbfounded, Laura questions the plumber's knowledge about her child. To her surprise, he reveals that she had mentioned it earlier. While they are talking, she feels a shadow pass by the window. The plumber then asks her if she hears a noise. At first, it is all quiet, but then she hears the sound of a child crying. The man tells her that it is her baby, and the woman, in an almost trance-like state, follows the noise to a room. Investigating, she discovers a... Before she can grasp the situation, the burnt man attacks her, and she wakes up startled. It turns out she had sleepwalked to the kitchen, where Ron is now comforting her. There was no plumber to begin with. Later, in the effort to seek help, Ron takes Laura to Dr. Marissa. The doctor suggests a stringent treatment plan, telling him that it is a medical case of hypomania and paranoid schizophrenia. But Ron insists on spiritual help. Tensions rise as Ron presses Laura, advocating for an exorcism by Father Agento. Laura, feeling overwhelmed by Ron's pressing behavior, agrees with him to resist further treatment, ignoring that the pills do make her a bit better. The man then tells the doctors to sign off on her, so that they can go and get the treatment that he thinks she needs. The doctor tries her best to make Laura stay with the treatment plan, but the woman remains quiet. Ron is angered at the doctor and storms out. As Ron departs, leaving Laura behind, the doctor provides her with a personal number for any emergencies. The woman thanks her and takes the card. As she joins Ron back in the car, the atmosphere takes a sharp turn. Ron becomes infuriated, and his anger seems to escalate to an alarming level. The intensity of his emotions raises concerns about his mental well-being. The couple breaks out into an argument. Ron is angry because she didn't say what he told her to say to the doctor, while Laura is infuriated that he isn't letting her be honest. She says that she was feeling better until she stopped taking the pills. This angers Ron even further, and he lashes out at her, saying that she is far from better, and it is him who has to deal with her. On the way, Ron's anger intensifies, and he talks down to poor Laura, making her feel worse. Suddenly, the woman's whole demeanor changes as if she has been possessed. Her hands start twisting in weird angles, and Ron becomes the target of Laura's aggression. She verbally abuses him, and even resorts to pulling his hair. In the midst of this turmoil, Ron manages to prevent a potential accident, saving the car from flipping over. However, Laura, who is seemingly unaware of her actions, suddenly breaks into tears, confused about what just happened. Ron gets scared and thinks the woman is possessed again. He starts chanting at the evil spirit to go away. After a nerve-wrenching moment, the chaos finally settles down. However, the horror is far from gone. In a terrifying twist, Laura experiences vivid visions and begins pulling her own hair aggressively. She sees a strange dark entity and keeps shouting at it to go away. Feeling alarmed for his wife's safety, Ron quickly steps in. He hugs the crying woman and caresses her lovingly to calm her down. Later we see Ron, who is burdened by the recent disturbing events. He confides in Barbara, revealing the unsettling episodes with Laura. He says that he doesn't want the entire community to know that his wife is sick. Thus, he wants the ritual to be private. Barbara understands and says that she would bring the congregation to meet them at home. Desperate for a solution, Ron inquires about Daniel's ability to help, and Barbara encourages Ron to contact him. She also tells Ron that there's no need for official sanction from the Vatican or a referral from a doctor for Daniel to perform an exorcism. The scene shifts to a remote place, where Daniel is performing a ritual with a supposedly possessed man. The poor man is stripped shirtless and tied to a chair where he is being ruthlessly. Daniel hits the man, who eventually starts bleeding. Afterwards, a boy approaches Daniel and tells him about a new call for an exorcism. Turns out, it was Ron who called for assistance. Daniel readily agrees to assist and makes his way to Ron for the exorcism. With the passage of time, Laura's condition worsens. She begins hiding herself inside her room. Once Daniel arrives at Ron's house, he greets them and then immediately questions the man about Laura's condition. Learning that Laura hasn't been restrained, Daniel insists on tying the possessed person at all times, because she poses a threat to not only herself, but the people around her too. Additionally, he advises against providing food, as it may strengthen the demonic entity. Thus, poor Laura must be restrained and kept inside her room without food and bathing for the ritual to work. Ron is skeptical at first, but after a little push from Daniel, who exploits his faith, the man agrees. How is it any different from being under observation inside a mental asylum? Ron then approaches Laura, who is spacing out inside their room. He brings a chair and a rope along with him, and tries to calmly tell his wife that they need to restrain her. He assures her that the measures are for her own well-being. Surprisingly, Laura agrees at first, possibly influenced by Ron's conviction, but soon the reality sets in, and she gets petrified at the thought of being restrained. Meanwhile, downstairs, we catch a glimpse of Daniel in the bathroom, seemingly psyching himself up for the upcoming task. It becomes evident that both Daniel and Barbara are fervent zealots, deeply entrenched in their religious beliefs. Their unwavering faith leads them to perceive possession in individuals and deeming them as non-human beings, thus dismissing medical evidence to the contrary. Daniel's approach, fueled by his zealotry, involves performing exorcisms without the need for official approvals or medical referrals. He genuinely believes he's doing good by liberating people from demonic influences, regardless of any opposing evidence or skepticism. Upstairs, Laura's fear escalates, leading her to attempt an escape. The poor, scared woman runs out of the room. However, Daniel intercepts her. He catches her near the stairs before she can escape. Ron also shows up, but instead of freeing his wife, he is swayed by Daniel's manipulative words. Daniel drags Laura outside and locks the screaming woman in the garage. After Laura loses consciousness, Daniel takes the opportunity to tie her to a chair. Sometime later, a restrained Laura comes back to her senses and starts calling out for her husband. Instead of Ron, Daniel comes out seeking information. He questions Laura, not about her identity, but the name of the supposed demon within her. Despite Daniel's pressing, Laura remains helpless. She keeps muttering her name and begging him to let her go, but the man wouldn't budge. Barbara also comes in and Laura begs her too, but the woman merely drops Daniel's belongings and goes back out. In the meantime, Ron also hears the cries of his wife, but he too remains in his seat, unwilling to aid her. Undeterred, Daniel initiates the exorcism on the crying girl. She starts seeing the terrifying entity once more and begs the man to stop. She even promises to take her pills and go to church from now on, but the man scoffs and continues. During the process, Laura's demeanor undergoes a drastic change. She starts hurling abusive words at Daniel, only to revert to a seemingly normal state moments later. Reacting to this, Daniel resorts to hitting Laura with the Bible, causing her to bleed from the mouth. Laura's behavior takes another turn as she bursts into uncontrollable laughter. In an attempt to counter this, Daniel picks up a jug of holy water and splashes it all on her face. Following the intense events, we see Daniel, who urges Barbara to gather their congregation for an exorcism. He says that the scale of possession is extremely hard to counter, thus they need more of their men, especially those with strong faith, who have been baptized in the holy water. Ron is a little worried at the idea of presenting his wife's vulnerable state to others, but Daniel sternly tells him to act straight, as he is the only one who can save his wife. Soon, members arrive in a bus, forming a collective effort to address Laura's situation. Upstairs in their room, Ron takes out a canvas with a baby's footprint on it. He caresses it and then hides it back inside the drawer. Meanwhile, downstairs, Daniel is once again psyching himself up, renewing his commitment to perform the exorcism. He almost looks crazy as he stares at himself in the mirror and says that it is his time to shine. Soon, the people all gather in the garage with Laura in the middle of the group. Ron looks on, worried and scared. As Daniel commences Laura's exorcism, he employs drastic measures, breaking vases. He addresses the demon and asks it to respond to his call. Laura's constitution changes once more, and she starts calling him names, but is duly shut up by him with a smack to her face. The exorcism continues, and so does Daniel's act of subjecting Laura to No longer being able to bear the love of his life being like this, Ron intervenes. He quickly pushes Daniel aside before he can torture the girl more. Laura sees this, and hope blossoms in her heart. She begs Ron to make them stop. In the midst of this, a girl named Ellie expresses that they should take a break for a bit. However, Daniel, using persuasive tactics, convinces Ron and others to proceed, despite the apparent distress caused by the exorcism. He ignores a weak Laura, who is begging for water, and corners Ron, telling him that unless they complete the exorcism, his wife would be forsaken, and she would be dragged to hell. After making sure that nobody would falter again, Daniel asks them to take a break. He tells them to go and have supper, and they would gather once more after an hour to continue with their noble cause. The people slowly file out of the room, ignoring Laura, who pleads for help. After all of them leave, she screams and collapses to the ground, next to a shard of the broken vase. Just then, Ellie enters the scene. She sees the crying Laura, who begs her to call for help. She retrieves Dr. Marissa's card from Laura's clothing as per her request, and before anyone can see her, she leaves. Later, the group gathers for dinner, attempting to cheer themselves up and gain strength for their upcoming fight against the demons. Ron still seems troubled. He looks as though he is desperately clutching at the straws of his faith and his love at the same time. The tranquility is soon disrupted when a girl hurriedly rushes in and informs them that Laura has fled. Panic sets in as the entire group launches a search for her. Meanwhile, Ellie takes out the card and contemplates whether to call the doctor or not. On the other side, in the darkness of the night, Laura desperately runs to evade her pursuers, who are calling out for her with torches in hand. Barefoot, the woman dives into the woods as fast as she can. Within the dense wilderness, Laura encounters embers and begins to follow them. Her dress catches on a piece of wood and rips, with a little piece remaining behind. This piece catches Ron's attention. Believing he has spotted Laura, he ventures off on his own, collecting the torn fabric as evidence. Meanwhile, in a terrifying encounter, Laura comes face to face with a demon and a burning inverted cross. In an unexpected turn, she begins dancing with the demonic entity, until Ron finally finds her and intervenes, causing her to lose consciousness. The following day, Dr. Marissa, who is concerned by Laura's prolonged absence, reports the situation to the police deputy. Realizing the severity of the matter, the deputy pledges to locate Laura. Back on the other side, we see an exhausted Ron and a comparatively fresh Daniel conversing. Ron questions Daniel about why the demon targeted Laura. Hearing this, Daniel takes out the footprint of Laura's son Elliot, suggesting that Laura's internal brokenness and her sense of responsibility for her child's demise made her vulnerable to the demonic influence. Soon, the exorcism continues once more. Laura is chained to the chair again, and a white sheet is draped over her. Daniel uncovers her, and we see an extremely weak and frail Laura, who is barely holding on to her life. This cruel man then shows her the footprint of her late son Elliot. Overwhelmed with emotion, Laura begins to cry. Daniel then hands the footprint to Ron, instructing him to break it. Despite Laura begging him not to, Ron complies. He shatters not only the tangible connection Laura had to her deceased child, but her poor fragile heart as well. Broken beyond repair, the poor woman begins to grieve. Yet Daniel's assaults in the name of God never cease. This group of fanatics soon lay the poor woman on the ground, and the exorcism intensifies. During this, a flashback reveals a tragic incident. In the memory, Laura is accompanied by her late husband, David, and their child, Elliot. She is driving the car. The radio talks about micrometals and water filters, the same conversation she had with the plumber. She changes the channel and hears bits and pieces of some legion and demonic possession stuff. This disturbance on the radio diverts her attention, leading to a fatal collision. In the aftermath, people arrive to help. They quickly get Laura out of the car, but David and their child are tragic. On the other hand, the other driver also passes away in the ensuing blast. It turns out that he was the same man that later appeared at Laura's house as a plumber in her illusion. All these connections show that the illusions and the demons that poor Laura has been seeing are nothing but a figment of her imagination, caused by the heavy and heart-wrenching trauma that she faced. Back to the present, in a desperate attempt to exorcise the demon, Daniel puts his hand into Laura's mouth, aiming to expel the malevolent force. However, Laura bites Daniel's hand, provoking his anger. In a disturbing turn of events, Daniel violently tears Laura's mouth, resulting in her demise. Till her last breath, she begs Ron to help, but his faith in his God doesn't let him. Daniel finally gets up, asserting that the demon has departed, and it is done. Yes, it is indeed done. All these fanatics have successfully taken a poor, ill woman's life. Ron, with tears streaming down his eyes, comes to lie beside his lifeless wife, calling her again and again. Laura, who is relieved of all the heartache and torture, is finally at peace along with her deceased husband and son. Seeing the lifeless corpse of Laura, the fanatics finally come back to reality. Daniel, however, still claims that Laura will resurrect, paralleling the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Ellie, expressing concern, suggests calling the police, but Daniel is enraged at this. He shouts at her for defying the words of God. Throughout, he keeps pressing them to follow his words, deeming them the words of God. He dismisses the idea of calling any authorities, assuring that Laura will come back to life. He also commands everyone to keep the incident a secret, with the promise of her resurrection in exactly 3 days, and declares they will defy the words of God if they disclose what has happened. The scene transitions to Dr. Marissa and the sheriff en route to Barbara's house. Along the way, they encounter a man who informs them that Barbara has gone to a house with a large gathering. Upon arrival, they find a fervent crowd gathered at the house, eagerly awaiting Laura's resurrection. Inside the house, Laura's lifeless body rests in a coffin, and Daniel appears ecstatic. Preventing Dr. Marissa and the sheriff from talking to Ron, Daniel remains in control, asserting the miraculous resurrection to come. As time passes, Laura remains lifeless, defying Daniel's claim of imminent resurrection. The sheriff takes action, arresting Daniel for his role in Laura's demise. On his way out, he mocks the doctor for not being able to save Laura. He madly claims that he was the only one who saved her at the end of the day. The sheriff drags him out after commenting that he better not save anyone else today. Dr. Marissa sits down with Ron, only to be shunned. Despite everything that happened, Ron remains convinced that a demon was responsible for Laura's struggles. Frustrated, he blames Dr. Marissa for not providing a referral that would have allowed Father Agento to perform an exorcism, preventing the tragedy. The doctor politely offers her condolences, but Ron refuses to accept it as a loss. He believes that the only reason why Laura didn't resurrect was that she decided it was better to stay with God than with them. Dr. Marissa, burdened by the realization that Laura's tragedy might have been averted, decides to leave. She recognizes the progress Laura was making with medication, but the unwavering belief in demonic possession, even by Laura's husband, overshadowed the potential for genuine help. In the movie's concluding scene, it is revealed that Laura never had a demon within her. Instead, she was battling a severe mental trauma. The figure in her dreams was not a demonic force, but her late husband, David. The movie represents the pitfalls of rigid beliefs and the consequences of blindly adhering to stereotypes. Daniel, Ron, and Barbara were tried for involuntary manslaughter, with all 3 of them proven guilty. The remaining members of the congregation escaped legal punishment. The movie ends with a powerful message on the dangers of engaging in unsanctioned exorcisms. Laura, a good-hearted individual, became a victim of misplaced faith and ignorance, emphasizing the devastating consequences of the misuse of spiritual beliefs.